message. Great. So good news. It's not your people. Bad news. It's someone else's people. Ian grimaced. Or their evil robot cult. Both possibilities are deeply unappealing. From outside, a heavy thudding sound echoed. Something large dragging itself through the station's remains. Erasha stood swiftly. We must go. Now. No argument there. They sprinted through the maintenance shaft, boots clanging on old grating, breath misting in the chilly air. The shaft emerged onto a high ridge overlooking the desolate plain beyond. In the dim morning light, Ian could see shapes moving. Hulking forms, hunched and misshapen, lurching through the ruins with grim purpose. They don't look like lawnmowers, he muttered. Arasha tapped a small device at her wrist, bringing up a holographic map. A thin blue line traced a path southward, toward what looked like a collection of domed structures partially buried in ash. There, she said, old research outpost. It may still have functioning equipment. Shelter. Ian grinned weakly. Shelter sounds nice. Functioning equipment sounds even nicer. Functioning coffee machine sounds like a straight-up miracle. As they made their way down the ridge, keeping low and fast, Ian couldn't help but ask, So, what are the odds that whatever wrecked this planet is waiting for us down there? Arasha considered it. Hi. Cool. No pressure. Ian wiped sweat from his brow and added, Just once, I'd like to walk into an ancient facility and not find a homicidal AI, mutant rats, or a surprise end-of-the-world device? Hope is irrational, Arasha said matter-of-factly. Lady, irrational hope is basically my whole business model. They reached the base of the ridge, just as one of the hulking forms behind them let out a metallic, ululating roar that made Ian's skin crawl. Whatever they were fast, and they were hunting. We need a distraction, Ian panted, scanning the rubble-strewn field for anything useful. His eyes landed on a cracked fusion battery lying half-buried under a pile of scrap. He pointed. That! Can you make it explode? Arasha gave him a look of pure, exasperated professionalism. Of course. She sprinted to the battery, pulling a small multi-tool from her belt. Sparks flew as she worked, fingers deft despite the urgency. Ian did what he did best, made noise. He shouted, whistled, banged a broken pipe against a fallen girder. Anything to draw the attention of the monstrous shapes behind them. The plan worked a little too well. One of the creatures, a grotesque fusion of organic muscle and mechanical plating, peeled off from the main group and came barreling straight toward him, howling in a voice that sounded like grinding gears and shredded lungs. Arasha, Ian yelped. Done, she shouted. Ian dove sideways just as Arasha triggered the battery. A pulse of white-hot plasma roared into the air, the explosion bright enough to cast the surrounding ruins into stark relief. The creature reeled back, shrieking, while Ian and Arasha bolted for the outpost with every scrap of speed they had. Behind them, the creatures regrouped, their furious roars shaking the ground. Ahead, the outpost loomed, battered, broken, but still standing. A promise of safety, a promise of answers, or maybe just another set of problems. But whatever lay ahead, Ian and Arasha were running toward it together. Stubborn, reckless, and bound by something stronger than fear, survival, trust, and the tiniest, most absurd flicker of hope. Even if that hope, Ian thought grimly, involved getting eaten by robotic mutant monsters before lunchtime. The outpost greeted them like a battered old dog, suspicious, half-collapsed, and very possibly infested with something unpleasant. The domes that once gleamed with polished alloy were cracked and scorched, their surfaces pitted with old impact wounds. Vines, if they could even be called that, more metal than plant, had begun to crawl up the sides, wrapping the structures like mechanical serpents reclaiming their territory. Ian staggered up the last slope, clutching a stitch in his side. Remind me to file a formal complaint with, physics, for making uphill running so impossible. Arasha, barely winded, cocked a long ear at him. You are inefficient. Lady, I'm a finely tuned machine, he wheezed. A vintage, finely tuned machine. They crossed into the shadow of the outer dome, Ian nervously checking over his shoulder. The creatures were still back there, somewhere in the ruined cargo station. He didn't see them now, but he felt their presence like a cold, metallic itch on his skin. The main entrance had collapsed under some ancient assault, so they picked their way around the side, finding a smaller service hatch mostly hidden under a drift of ash. Ian gave it a tentative kick. It rattled but stayed shut. "Plan B?" he suggested brightly. Without a word, Arasha pulled a slim black tool from her belt, something that looked suspiciously like a dental pick crossed with a laser scalpel. She jammed it into the seam of the hatch, twisted, and with a pneumatic gasp, the door popped open. "Velmaran locksmithing?" Ian guessed. "Battlefield improvisation," she corrected, stepping inside. The interior was worse, dark, cluttered, smelling faintly of burnt ozone and despair. Broken drones littered the floors like mechanical carcasses, and shattered glass crunched underfoot. Dim strips of emergency lighting still flickered weakly, casting long, twitching shadows. Ian stuck close behind her, flashlight bobbing in his hand. "If a killer robot jumps out, you're punching it. I'll just scream supportively." The central control room was a sunken oval chamber, surrounded by rows of dead consoles. At the far end stood a massive reinforced door, sealed tight, with a cracked terminal blinking an anemic red. Arasha knelt beside the console, frowning. She pressed a few buttons. The screen spat back an error message in blocky Velmaran script. "What's it say?" Ian asked, peering over her shoulder. She translated grimly. "System integrity, critical failure, containment breach, unresolved, manual override required." Ian took a cautious step back. "Did you say containment breach? Because that sounds very unpleasant slime monster to me." Araja's fingers danced across the terminal. She didn't answer immediately, her face drawn tight with concentration. Finally, she said, "This facility was designed for biological research. Dangerous research." "Define dangerous." Ian swallowed. She tilted her head, thinking. "Imagine your Earth sharks. Now imagine if someone gave them hyperintelligence, exoskeletal armor, and the ability to walk on land." Ian turned visibly paler. "Okay, good. Good to know. Filing that under reasons to leave immediately." The door's lock hissed and clanked. Arasha stood, stepping back as the massive slab of metal began to grind open. A burst of stale, freezing air gusted out, carrying the distinct smell of something ancient and very unhappy to be disturbed. "Or we could open it. That works too," Ian muttered. They entered cautiously. The chamber beyond was vast and circular, with rows of containment tanks lining the walls. Most were cracked or shattered, their contents long since escaped or decomposed into foul stains on the floor. Only a few tanks still hummed faintly, their interiors swirling with dark, viscous fluid. In the center of the room stood something Ian hadn't expected, a holographic terminal, flickering erratically. Above it, a frozen image. A Velmaran scientist, her features sharp and severe, her long ears marked with ceremonial rings. Arasha approached, studying the recording. After a moment, she touched the terminal. The hologram stuttered, cleared its throat, and spoke. "Project ALTHEON, final log. To any who find this, containment has failed. Our creation was unstable. It adapted beyond our controls, beyond our safeguards. We attempted to destroy it. We failed. Velmara has fallen." The hologram's voice cracked. She looked down at something unseen. "If you hear this, run. There is no salvation here, only extinction." The image froze, the last flicker of the scientist's haunted eyes hanging in the cold air. Ian let out a slow, unsteady breath. On the bright side, at least they left us clear instructions this time. Araja's gaze lingered on the hologram. Her mouth tightened, and for a heartbeat, she looked unbearably alone. Then she turned sharply. "We need supplies, weapons, data cores, anything we can carry." Ian nodded, swallowing whatever joke had been about to tumble out. Some moments weren't meant to be diffused. They moved through the wreckage, scavenging. Ian found a half-functional plasma cutter in a ration pack that might not have expired yet. An exciting discovery until he read the flavor. Extruded algae protein, citrus variant. He decided hunger might be the better option. Araja located a surviving data core, a squat, humming cube barely larger than her hand, and slipped it into her pack with a look of fierce determination. "So," Ian said as they regrouped near the main chamber's exit. "Question. The monster, the thing your people cooked up, it's still out there somewhere, isn't it?" Arasha nodded once. "Yes. And the symbols we saw back at the cargo station? Related?" Another nod. Grim. "Cool, cool, 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 cool." Ian exhaled. Just wanted to get all that horrifying context lined up nice and neat. From somewhere deep in the facility, a low rumbling growl answered him. Something big and ancient and very much awake. They looked at each other. No words needed. Run. They bolted for the entrance, the flickering lights flashing like strobe warnings. Behind them, the growl rose into a roar. Metallic, primal, terrible. And still, through the thudding panic in his veins, Ian found himself grinning. "This," he gasped as they ran. "This is exactly why I don't join book clubs anymore." The sons of Velmara clawed higher into the sky as Ian and Arasha tore out of the research outpost, lungs burning, boots skidding across the cracked earth. Behind them, the ancient facility heaved a guttural metallic shriek, the kind of noise that suggested very large things moving very fast in very wrong ways. Ian risked a glance over his shoulder and immediately wished he hadn't. Something massive and glistening surged through the outpost doors, a nightmarish amalgam of synthetic plating and slithering tendrils. Its shape never quite settling into anything his brain was willing to recognize as safe. It moved like a bad idea given flesh, twisting and snapping at the air with mouths that were definitely surplus to requirements. "Well," Ian huffed, "that's going right to the top of my things I'm never telling my therapist about list." Arasha was already plotting their escape, scanning the terrain with sharp, quick glances. She pointed toward a cluster of half-buried transit shuttles, their hulls skeletal but still more solid than open ground. "This way," she shouted, taking the lead. They ducked under shattered fencing, hurdled debris, and skidded down a slope of loose gravel. Ian nearly tripped twice, saved only by Arasha grabbing the back of his jacket and yanking him upright with alarming efficiency. "You're very grabby," he panted. "You are very folly," she retorted, not even breaking stride. They reached the nearest shuttle, a once proud interplanetary transport now rusting like an abandoned toy. Its access hatch hung ajar, a black maw gaping in welcome. Arasha slipped inside first, Ian scrambling after her. He slammed the hatch shut and threw the manual lock, as if that thin piece of steel could hold back whatever cosmic horror was now sniffing around outside. Inside, the shuttle was a claustrophobic maze of narrow corridors and dangling wires. Emergency lights sputtered, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Arasha moved efficiently, checking systems with the casual air of someone who had survived worse odds. Ian, meanwhile, busied himself with the important task of not having a complete panic attack. "So, plan?" he asked, voice slightly higher than normal. Arasha pried open a maintenance panel and started tinkering with the exposed circuits. "Activate auxiliary thrusters, launch shuttle, evade pursuit." Ian gave a nervous laugh. "Sounds great. Love a good plan that includes the word evade. Just one teeny tiny question. Does this flying tin can actually still fly?" Arasha didn't look up. 42% chance. Ian's eye twitched. "Ah, so basically the same odds as me cooking pasta without setting off a fire alarm. Good to know." There was a shudder through the hull, a heavy, dragging sound outside. Ian held his breath. The creature, or creatures, were circling. Arasha slammed the panel shut and pulled him toward the cockpit. They stumbled into the cramped space, squeezing into cracked leather seats that had clearly not been designed with human comfort in mind. The control array flickered uncertainly as Arasha powered it up. She barked commands in rapid Velmaran, the shuttle groaning in protest like an old dog being asked to sprint. Lights blinked. Consoles stuttered to life. Somewhere deep below them, engines coughed and whined. Ian gripped the sides of his seat. "If this thing blows up, I just want it on record. I never learned how to drive stick." Arasha flipped a series of toggles. "It is not a manual vehicle." Ian considered this. "I still think I'll find a way to crash it." There was no countdown, no dramatic rumble of engines revving up to full power. Instead, the shuttle simply lurched upward with all the grace of a drunken walrus attempting ballet. Ian's stomach dropped straight into his boots as they rocketed, and he used the word generously, about 15 feet into the air before the thrusters cut out again, dropping them with a bone-jarring crash back onto the ground. Both of them sat in stunned silence for a moment. "Well," Ian managed eventually, "that was slightly less than majestic." Araja shot him a look that suggested she was seriously reconsidering saving his life back at the cargo station. "Again," she said firmly. She restarted the thrusters, manually overriding safety protocols Ian was pretty sure had been there for very good reasons. This time the shuttle groaned but lifted higher, a juddering, coughing ascent that rattled every bolt and nerve in Ian's body. Below them, the thing roared in frustration, a sound that sent dust and debris spiraling upward in violent whirlwinds. As they clawed their way into the thin upper atmosphere, Ian slumped back in his seat, adrenaline finally giving way to exhausted, hysterical laughter. "We did it," he gasped. "We actually did it. We outran whatever that was. You and me. Team definitely not qualified." Aracia allowed herself a very small, very rare smile. For now, that dampened the mood slightly. The shuttle stabilized, engines coughing into a steady, if uneven, hum. Through the cracked cockpit window, Velmara stretched out below them, a wasteland of ruined cities, shattered highways, and the skeletal remains of once mighty spaceports. Ian's smile faded as he took it all in. "This planet, it didn't just fall apart, did it?" he said quietly. "It was broken." Araja nodded, her long ears drooping slightly. "Broken," she echoed, "by fear, by ambition, by the belief that they could control evolution itself." Ian was silent for a long moment. Then he said, voice lighter but still sincere, "For what it's worth, your people made at least one good decision. They made you." Araja blinked at him, genuinely taken aback. "I mean," Ian added quickly, grinning, "you're bossy. You have an alarming talent for improvised explosives, and your idea of a good time is surviving near-death experiences. But still, solid choice." The corner of her mouth twitched. "You are strange," he shrugged. "Takes one to know one." The shuttle veered south, toward the hazy outline of mountains on the horizon. Somewhere out there, they hoped, was a working relay station, a chance to call for help, or at least figure out their next move. Below, unseen, the creature prowled the ruins, its many eyes turning skyward. It had not forgotten them, and neither, somewhere deep down, had Velmara itself. The shuttle's engines coughed again, protesting every mile they forced out of the battered frame. Panels rattled overhead with a whirring looseness, and every now and then a puff of smoke would squeeze out from somewhere under the controls, making Ian eye the cockpit like it was a ticking time bomb. "I feel like we're flying a microwave that's been possessed by a poltergeist," he said, coughing dramatically. Aracia, focused on the cracked nav display, simply replied, "Be grateful it flies." "I'm grateful, very grateful. I'm overflowing with gratitude. I'm so grateful I might explode." Ian slapped the dashboard affectionately. "See? Bonding with the machine. That's a human thing. Maybe it'll feel loved and stop trying to kill us." A groan from the shuttle's hull suggested it had very strong feelings about that idea. They were banking low over what had once been a vibrant Velmaran city, now a twisted graveyard of metal and glass. Great towers leaned drunkenly against one another, fused together by time and disaster. Broken monorails coiled through the ruins like the skeletons of giant serpents. Here and there, the glint of autonomous drones, or what remained of them, caught the sunlight like fallen stars. Ian watched the devastation pass beneath them. "This place must have been incredible once." Araja's voice was quiet. "It was." She didn't say more, and Ian didn't push. Some wounds didn't like being poked, even by well-meaning idiots. Instead, he fiddled with the comm system, trying to coax a signal from the wheezing relics of Velmaran tech. Static hissed and popped through the speakers, punctuated by occasional bursts of something that might have been language, or just very angry seagulls. "Good news," Ian said brightly. "If we're attacked by a horde of hostile white noise, we're ready." Aracia allowed a soft snort, almost a laugh. "There," she said suddenly, pointing ahead. Ian squinted. On the horizon, where the cracked plains met the jagged mountains, A thin silver spire stabbed upward, surrounded by crumbling outbuildings. The relay station, Ian guessed. Intact, Arasha confirmed. If we can activate its systems, we can send a distress signal. Awesome. Just one teensy problem, Ian said, frowning. That thing back at the outpost? It's smart, right? It'll figure out where we're headed. Araja considered this. Most likely. Wonderful. Ian drummed his fingers nervously on the dashboard. Any backup plans? You know, in case Plan A gets eaten? She tilted her head thoughtfully. Plan B is generally to improvise.